Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Rules lawyer is someone who constantly searches the rules for any way to manipulate or gain an advantage out of knowing the rules better than anybody else does, or knowing how to bend the rules to their will. I just like to know the rules. It's different.
Welcome to episode 41 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Episode 41 of us. I don't remember the Spanish for 40.
Seriously, you're an idiot. This episode comes out on March 13th. It is almost my birthday. Hey, it's my birthday month.
That's right.
Yay, it's my birthday month again.
Yay!
I'm going to annoy everybody with that again.
We need to drink whiskey.
Well, of course. It'll be on my birthday. I have to do that.
Yes.
I've got plenty in that cabinet right above you.
Yes, you do.
There's plenty in there. So, awesome. So, I don't have anything of note. So, if you don't have anything particular, I will turn it over to you for the nerdery side of the house.
I am Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Today, we are going to talk about the fourth game in the Milton Bradley Master Series system. We do want to get with Keith before we do Axis and Allies.
Correct.
We want him on there. But this one, I figured we could do this one first and get it out of the way. It is Broadsides and Boarding Parties.
The one that I've played the least of.
Yeah, I only know one person who has it. So
I think I've played it twice.
I've played it, I think, 3 times. And every time I played it with Keith. Because it's his game. I hope he still has it.
I don't know. I think he does.
Yeah, if he's looking to get rid of it, Keith, hit me up.
Oh, there's not a chance.
I'll buy it off of you.
Not a chance.
It took him so long to find it.
If he's got it, he ain't getting rid of that.
No. Broadsides and Boarding Parties is a board game published by Milton Bradley in 1984. So it was part of their Gamemaster series, and it was the 3rd in the series. And it was designed by Larry Harris, and is the only game of that series to feature a 2-player game. All of the games in the Gamemaster series were for 2 or more players. Broadsides and Boarding Parties is a duel between a Spanish galleon and a pirate ship. Players take turns moving their ships and firing at other ships to sink her. If the ships collide, then the players may take boarding parties onto the other ships to try and win. The original version of the game, published by the Citadel in 1982, used a paper map and cardboard pieces and did not have the plastic ships, cannons, and other playing pieces. When Hasbro brought the publishing rights, they added these components to bring the physical components in line with other games in the series. However, many players found the large ship models were difficult to disassemble, making the storage of the game awkward. A more serious problem was that the gameplay was not considered up to the level of other games in the series. There was relatively little strategy and more luck involved than the other games as part of the series. Broadsides and Boarding Parties was unfavorably compared to the other games and was less popular. Broadsides and Boarding Parties was discontinued several years after its introduction. Now, having said that, I don't remember it being out that long.
I don't think it was out very long at all. I mean, it went into obscurity fairly quickly.
Yes.
And then you couldn't find it anywhere.
No.
For some reason, it seemed to be the least popular of them, of any of the games. And it just kind of disappeared and you couldn't find it.
Well, I mean, I get it. By comparison, it is not as strategy heavy. I would not say there's not any strategy to it because you have to, it's spatial strategy. You have to maneuver your ships in the right way to get the right outcome.
Right.
And you do that by placing these little cards. Maybe I should explain. So how it goes down is there is a board that you have, it has these little islands in it, and you've got these little ship models. And you've got these cards, and when you lay these cards out, they tell you how your ship's going to move. There's a forward, there's a stop, there's a left turn, right turn. And you lay these cards out in sequence upside down, and when you start, you move your ships, and you try to maneuver them where you can hit the other ship. Now, if your ships are front to front, you can't really fire all of your cannons. Ideally, what you want to do is hit it with a broadside. So if you can broadside your ship to their ship, especially if they're running away from you, you can really deal a lot of damage. Now, you can sink the ships this way, and I've played in games where you take hull damage, and that's, your ship sink. And the more hull damage you take, the fewer of those maneuver cards you have. So it kind of restricts your movement. But it is a little, I don't want to say like chess, but more like Go, where the more you play, the more restrictive your movements are, and you can get cornered. Now, what you want to do is maneuver your ships in line so you can get a broadside, or you want to maneuver a boarding party. And how boarding parties work is when the ships touch, however they touch, you have these giant ship models that you have to put together every time with these little guys on them. You angle the ships in the way that they hit, on the other playing board, and you move your little guys over. Now, when you do hand-to-hand combat, your crew members move onto a section occupied by an enemy crew member. You must engage them in hand-to-hand combat. All combat is conducted after your 3 movements and finished. Crew members may not retreat from combat. Each player rolls a die, and the highest number eliminates the opposing crew member. Each time you roll, you have 1 more crew member than your opponent in that section. You add a +1 to your roll. If you have 2 more crew members, you add a +2. So they're each little sections on this ship, and you move the little guys in there. Now, if you've got 3 guys and they've got 1, you get +3 to your die roll because you're fighting 3 people instead of 1, presumably. And if your captain is one of those combatants, you also get a +1. And the little captain figure is pretty well marked. They look like pirates. I mean,
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Yes. Yeah, very much so, with a little tricorn hat and everything. So in that second layer, let's talk about the first layer of the game first, where you're playing with the small ships on the board. You plot your movements with the deck of cards, and you attempt to maneuver them in such a way where you can get a good volley of the cannonballs. And you want to minimize the risk of your return fire. So in the second layer, you only have 3 movements. You can move 3 times, and then you have to do the combat. So there is some planning and strategy on how to get them across. Now, I have won and lost on boarding parties, and I have won and lost with just the broadside sections. The components for the games are very, very elaborate. These plastic ships are beautiful. As we said before, these Gamemaster Series games are not called Gamemaster Series without reason. Down to the cover art. The box art is beautiful. The map is very beautiful and intricate. The small ships are very intricate and beautiful. But the large ships is really where they kind of threw all their money. And I think that may be why a lot of people didn't like it, because you had to disassemble that ship every time you.
I'm sure. As I think about playing this game, like I said, I'm almost positive I only played twice, and I'm almost positive Keith mopped the floor with me both times.
I have beat Keith. Yeah, I beat Keith once during a broadside and once during a boarding party. But I want to say I played it 4 or 5 times, and he wiped the floor with me, and it was close.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things we haven't played that often, because very rarely is it just 2 people playing. The big ships are about 1 foot long, and they have removable masts. Now, you can play them without the masts, I believe. Mm-hmm. I think there's a height advantage with the masts, but you don't have to put them all the way together. But I mean, they're the last pieces you put on, so it really doesn't matter. You might as well. And you've got these little crew pieces are beautiful. And I have included some pictures of all the little pieces. And the board is in full color and styled for the 18th century. I do agree it's not as strategy heavy as, say, Shogun.
Sure.
It is not as strategy heavy as Axis and Allies. It's also more strategy driven than, say, Monopoly, which is generally when we talk about board games. That is, most people, that's what they think of when they think of board games.
Well, in this game, it's more anything else. Can you outmaneuver your opponent, mm-hmm. get to where your weapons are favorable mm-hmm. to them? Getting the hand up on the boarding party,
yeah,
and it basically just kicking their ass.
Yes,
I mean that's the basics of the game: outmaneuver, outgun, outclass, win.
Yes, it's pretty straightforward, and it's a quick game.
Oh yeah, no, it's a very quick game.
Yeah, you could play 2 or 3 games in an hour and a half, mm-hmm. Depending on how well you maneuver. I have played one where there was a lot of maneuvering, and we never, I was defeated in a broadside, but it was a long game because there was a lot of maneuvering. We were running our ships around this little board with these little islands on it. If you can find it,
just found it.
You found it? Mm-hmm. Found what?
Broadsides and Boarding Parties.
Oh, yeah? What's it selling for?
Found it on eBay for $350.
Wow.
Yep.
And I bet that's not new in the box with plastic on it either.
No, it's used.
Yeah.
And that is a $350 buy it now, so
yeah,
you could make an offer.
Yeah. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. This is one of those ones that I wish they would reproduce.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know why they haven't. I think it might be worth it to look that up to really find the why mm-hmm. it didn't have near the success of any of the others.
Yeah, well, I mean, in some of these notes they say it's because it was compared unfavorably to the other ones because of its lack of strategy. I don't see that it has that much of a lack of strategy. No, it's not as strategy heavy, but you still have to be pretty good at this to win it. You can't necessarily luck out. Now, again, with anything, if you get a good dice roll, you can make it happen.
There's a game called Merchants and Marauders Broadsides.
What?
$38. It's on Board Game Co. I'll send it to you.
Okay, maybe we need to add this. Is this an updated version?
I don't know. It says, at the helm of your mighty vessel, revisit the golden age of piracy with Merchants and Marauders Broadsides, a game in which you and your opponent are engaged in a deadly battle hoping to sink each other's ship. Load your cannons, aim, and unload everything you've got at the enemy.
Nice.
It almost sounds
like Broadsides and Boarding Parties.
A little bit. Interesting.
Yeah. And I would say I enjoy both layers of this game. I definitely do. I enjoy the maneuvering aspect, and I enjoy the broadside aspect. I understand why they made it 2 players, but I would be interested to see if you could ever come up with a 4-player version of this game. You'd have to have 2 copies of it.
Here's a Citadel Games version from 1982 for $138.
Oh, yes, but it doesn't have the boarding parties.
It's Broadsides and Boarding Parties.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
The original Citadel Games one. Interesting.
Nice. Yeah, maybe we have to check that one out. That might be a little bit cheaper than $350 for one we're not even sure it has all the pieces for. I wonder if we could. I guess it is possible to 3D print that. Yeah, and then you would have to keep the. Well, you could always keep the pirate ships in a different container, I guess, than the box. Yeah, that makes sense. I think we've basically thought our way out of this one. All right. Well, I don't have much more on this game. There's not a lot out there. Again, because it wasn't as popular. But it is, again, if you kids can get out there and play it, try the Citadel version. If you can get your hands on a Broadsides and Boarding Parties, say you find it at a garage sale, pick it up. It's worth it.
Oh, sure. Like I said, they're on eBay used, $350.
$350, yeah.
Yeah. So easily well worth it. It's a fun game, and as you talked about, it's one of the Gamemaster Series, which they're beautiful games to have in the first place. Whether or not you even take it off the shelf, they are beautiful games to look at. And they're all a lot of fun to play.
Yes.
I can't wait till we talk about the Axis and Allies one. That's going to be probably a pretty long episode.
Yes.
Broadsides and Boarding Parties. This was been a little short, but the game is also very short.
Yeah, usually you could play a good round of it in about a half hour.
Right.
Well, I mean, after you put the ships together, that does take a few minutes.
Right.
Because they're all apart in pieces. And then getting the little guy set up, because you have a small, so it's 20 crew members, so it's kind of a long setup. Also, you have 10 cannons. You place them on the deck section of your ship where cannons ports appear along the hull. B3, B5, C3, C5, D3, D5, E3, E5, F3, and F5. And that's basically it for the setup. You have 5 cannons per side, 2 forward and 1 midship, and 2 aft. Resolving cannon fire. We didn't talk about that. Sorry. You can only have 5 active cannons, and those are the side of the ship that's facing your enemy. So a cannon fire is simultaneous, and you choose a player to roll first. Each cannon the player can fire. The player declares any deck section A through H on the opponent's ship and rolls a die to hit a target in that section. And depending on what you roll, as to how it hits. So you roll a 6-sided dice. For a 1, it's always a miss. For 2, it's hull damage. For 3, all targets in the 3 positions of the section are hit. A 4 hits a mast in the section A, C, G, or H. And in the 5, all targets in the 5 positions of the section, it hits. And on a 6, it also always misses. So you roll a 1 or a 6, you miss. Anything else, you hit something.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask Keith if he still has it and get him to pull this game out, because now I'm suddenly interested in playing it again.
Yes, because you can lose all crew in a section from cannon fire. I remember that now. So when you get to your boarding party, it may be advantageous not to do a boarding party if you've lost all your crew in that section,
Right.
Because if you've lost, I guess it's 3 in a section. So say you take 3 hits, you could lose 9 crew. And when you come up against someone with all of their crew, that's kind of some rough odds to take, depending on how they do the boarding party. So, But that is basically it for Broadsides and Boarding Parties.
Cool. Good recap on that. Like I said, I'm gonna holler at Keith on that.
Yes.
So. All right.
Keith Chenoweth. Just in case we didn't hit him the last couple.
I think we did. So with that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today's story, I got my information off The Telegraph, Inside Edition, Wikipedia, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Film Daily, Futurism, Lake Oconee News, Morbidology, Medium, and this is the story of the Lake Oconee Murders.
Lake Oconee?
Oconee. It's in Georgia.
Okay.
So we're starting off with Russell Derman and his wife Shirley. They were 88 and 87, respectively. They lived in Reynolds Lake Water, which was an exclusive gated community on Lake Oconee where they were enjoying their retirement years. Their home was on a cul-de-sac, which gave them total privacy and a really great view of the water. They'd been married for 68 years. And Russell had been in the corporate world as an executive in a clock manufacturing company up in the Northeast, but he became semi-retired and moved to Georgia in the 80s to run a chain of Hardee's. Man, I miss Hardee's.
Hardee's.
You know, when I read that, I'm like, I know Carl's Jr. is basically Hardee's. Once you get west of the Mississippi, it becomes Carl's Jr. Mm-hmm. You got to go back east to get it to be Hardee's. It's just, I don't know why it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same menu, but it's not the same. And I miss Hardee's being here. So.
Oh, yeah. We had a Hardee's over in North Richland Hills that would have like crab legs on the...
Did they really?
On a buffet. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. They had a buffet on the weekend. I remember hitting it a couple of times when I lived over there.
Interesting. I'd never seen that in a Hardee's. I mean, not that this has anything to do with the story. I just miss Hardee's, and I wish it would come back to Texas.
Me too.
Shirley herself had been a homemaker. She enjoyed gardening, playing bridge, and doing crossword puzzles. I love this semi-retired thing. I want to be retired so bad. But, you know, this sounds really, really kind of cool that they moved into a nice gated community to enjoy their retirement years, and they'd been enjoying it for about 15 years.
Nice.
They did, however, have a little bit of tragedy in their lives. Early in their retirement, their son Mark was murdered while trying to buy crack cocaine. His killer was actually caught and remains behind bars to this day. But other than that one tragedy. There we go.
Tragedy.
Yeah. Wow. There was really nothing out of the ordinary out of the couple. They were regular churchgoers. They enjoyed reading. They played golf. They went to the movies. They went to lunch with their friends. Nice retirement life. On May 2nd, 2014, Russell was seen walking the golf course near the Derman home. He was also seen doing errands around the town throughout the day, so quite a few people saw him. And then a few days earlier, Shirley played her regular weekly bridge game, but this would be the last time either one was ever seen publicly. On May 3rd, the Dermans accepted an invitation from neighbors to attend a Kentucky Derby party in the neighborhood, and the Dermans didn't show up for the party. This didn't alarm anybody, though. I mean, okay, so yes, you say you're going to go to a party, but you don't show up. That doesn't necessarily mean anything's bad happened. And
they were elderly.
Elderly, right. Anything could have been going on. But after a couple of days, no one had seen the Dermans, so neighbors began trying to call the couple, trying to reach them, and eventually on May 6th, the people who actually invited them to the party went to their house to do a little welfare check on them, since nobody could reach them by phone. They went to the house, they found the back door unlocked, and they went inside the back door, which led into a screened-in porch, and this is where Russell usually watched TV. Nothing was out of place. Everything was immaculate. Shirley was known to be a fairly good housemaker, but everything was neat and tidy and in its place. There was nothing wrong at all. They called out to the Dermans, and they walked every room of the 4,250 square foot home, so it's a big home. Nothing. They're not getting anything from the Dermans. They didn't see anything out of place again. Looking through the rest of the house, they said it was immaculate, so they went out to check the garage, and what they found out here was bone-chilling. Behind the couple's Lexus SUV and their Lincoln Town car was Russell's body. His head was missing. Towels had been placed around the corpse to keep blood from draining under the garage door into the driveway, so it was just pooled around in the towels. Shirley was nowhere to be found. Police were immediately called, and FBI were brought in. And I really didn't know why the FBI had been brought in so early. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if it's because low crime rate in the neighborhood, and so local authorities really didn't have the expertise, that maybe they weren't equipped to handle something of this magnitude.
Like a decapitation?
Like a decapitation. I mean, I don't know. Later, I did read, though, that the sheriff enlisted up to 70 deputies from neighboring sheriff's offices along with the 10 FBI agents. So I just found that interesting that they're immediately calling in the FBI. Sheriff Sills, who was over the Putnam County Sheriff's Office, he brought in cadaver dogs, and he had divers drag the lake behind the Dermond's property, but there was no trace of Shirley. They couldn't find her anywhere. They felt that the murder appeared to be the work of of professionals.
That's why they called it the FBI.
Maybe, and maybe so. Maybe because they thought it was professionals, they did that. And Sills said initially he assumed the beheading was meant to send a message. But the FBI couldn't find any connection to the Dermonds in any of their investigations. So there's nothing with organized crime or anything like that. The couple had no known enemies.
The guy ran a Hardee's, man.
I know, they did run a Hardee's.
And before that, he was a clockmaker.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I get it if it's used cars. Not to besmirch anyone in my family, but I get it if it's used cars. But
sure, it's
clocks and Hardee's.
Right. So that was weird. Sills, though, he did say that professionals would not expend the time it would take to decapitate. He said they shoot you in the head and leave. They said that the beheading was very neat and very precise, like not surgeon precise, but clean enough that someone had to take their time to do it. Over the next 10 days, Sheriff Sills held press conferences and fielded questions to the Dermond's 3 grown children as well as neighbors, but no clues could come up about what happened at all. So they started to begin to wonder if Shirley had just run off, if she had something to do with the murder, or maybe she was kidnapped. Maybe this was part of an extortion thing.
And you said they had been married 63 years, right?
60-something, yeah.
Yeah, so they're in their 80s?
Yeah. Okay. Russell was 88, Shirley was 87. But if Shirley had run off, her purse, cell phone, and car keys were all still inside the home, including both vehicles. So she probably didn't run off, and the house wasn't missing anything valuable. So it wasn't a robbery gone wrong either. One of the couple's sons, Keith, he told a reporter on May 14th, quote, "Each hour that goes by, my brother, my sister, and me are becoming more resigned to the fact that we may never see her again, and we may never know what happened. If she is still alive, we cannot imagine what she's going through. The human spirit is incredibly strong, but it has almost got to the stage where we hope she is with our father just to ease our suffering." And then they started putting Shirley's face all over electric billboards all over Georgia, asking for information about her whereabouts. On May 9th, they did an autopsy on Russell, and it was reported that he was likely killed before he was beheaded. I didn't put it here. I talked about it later, but they believe he was shot and then decapitated. They believe he was taken somewhere, shot, decapitated, and the body brought back because they did find gunshot residue on his collar of his shirt. Then on May 16th, 2 men were out fishing about 6 miles from the Dermond house when they came across a woman's body floating face down in the lake. There were cinder blocks attached to her ankles. She had been sunk in about 90 feet of water and was found tangled in treetops just below the surface. She had not been decapitated. Sheriff Sills was immediately called, and he went out by boat to personally pull the body from the water, and it was Shirley Dermond. Decomp and internal gas had swollen her 5'2" body to twice its normal rate, which is why it lifted up even with the cinder blocks. Sheriff Sills told Inside Edition...
You said at 90 feet?
90 feet.
That's why they didn't find it in the dredging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was... I read somewhere that was potentially the deepest part of the lake, so it's almost like somebody knew that was the deepest part, too. Who knows? Sheriff Sills told Inside Edition she had been beaten to death. There were multiple blows to her head by some sort of blunt object, possibly a hammer. Shirley's body was fully closed, and there was no sign of sexual assault. The coroner determined she was placed in the water after death, so she wasn't drowned to death. The Derman home was processed, but there was no unusual fingerprints, nor was there DNA evidence discovered. Their bank records were reviewed and their safety deposit box was open. Authorities checked the Dermans' will and examined phone records as well as cell phone tower records. They interviewed hundreds of people, and the 3 children were all giving polygraphs, 2 of which were given directly by the FBI, which they passed. Again, though, with polygraphs, you can't accept their validity.
No.
I really wonder why we still use them since they're inadmissible in court and they're so unreliable. So I looked it up. Leonard Sachs, a psychologist from Brandeis University? Brandeis University, and someone who has performed a lot of research on polygraph machines, stated, quote, "There is no unique physiological sign of deception, and there's no evidence whatsoever that the things the polygraph measures, heat, rate, blood pressure, sweating, and breathing, are linked to whether you're telling the truth or not." Furthermore, the National Research Council conducted in a recent report that, quote, "almost a century of research in scientific psychology and physiology provides little basis for the expectation that a polygraph test could have extremely high accuracy. The polygraph's greatest weapon is the belief that it works. It's a prop used by law enforcement and by some employers. They're a deterrent, and in some cases, somebody who believes you can tell when they are lying are more reliable to tell the truth. Unfortunately, sometimes the prop is too good because there are people, both interrogators and bystanders alike, who believe the polygraph is accurate and actually works.
It's a scare tactic.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the children passed the polygraph. It would end up not mattering anyway, as it was confirmed that none of the 3 were in the area when the murders
I'll tell you, yeah, he was from up north, right? So
yeah, the children all lived, I believe, in neighboring states. So Keith Thurman said in 2016, quote, "It's very hard to catch somebody when you don't even know their motive. You have no clue as to what you're looking for. I always thought that, maybe it was some kind of serial killer kind of thing just because of the weird things that the killer did. But the thing is, a lot of times serial killers are very hard to catch. They know what they're doing, but if you think there would be other crimes, you would think there would be other crimes. Unless somebody comes forward and gives them a clue, what else have they to go on? It's 2 years later. I think the only chance we have at this point is that he trips himself up." In May of 2021, Sills has told the press that he has a clue he's actively working on, but declined to elaborate what it is. Sills said, quote, "I'm not exaggerating. I think about this case every day, no matter where I am. I look in the mirror and there I am, unable to solve this damn case. The concern of it may be diminished in the public because time, of course, erodes all things. Before I continue on, I want you to think Wilford Brimley when I talk about this guy. He's got the mustache. He's got the glasses. I just want you to hear Brimley in your head.
Okay.
I travel all over the United States of America, and the first thing people ask me, no matter where I go, about the Derman killings, they'll say, they never came up with nothing on that murder, did they? I say, well, you're looking at they, and they ain't gave up yet. Sills does follow up on every tip that comes in. Just a few weeks before May 2021, he received a tip from a college professor from another state that seemed plausible until Sills ran it down. The professor claimed that a psycho love interest she had met online was responsible for killing the Dermans. She even emailed Sills hundreds of pages of notes supporting her claim, but Sills was able to debunk them. Sills also believes multiple people were most likely involved in the murders, but they have no key evidence. Russell's head has never been found. He believes that though Russell was most likely shot in the head, they have no bullet to test. Again, the gunshot residue on the collar told him that he was most likely shot. While Sills has no suspects in the Derman case, he has collected some physical evidence that could eventually confirm the killer's identity. He says he thinks the Derman's killers were motivated by money, but nothing was stolen from their home. Sills says it's just one of the many contradictions that makes this case all the more exasperating. Investigators would later reveal that they believe the killer or killers had come to the Derman home via boat. The reason for this is there are security cameras at the front of the community, but the lake is open to the public. However, in a strange coincidence, The cameras were not working anyway that day, and they didn't know until the police asked for the videos. It had actually been damaged in a recent electrical storm, and they didn't know
They didn't know it wasn't working. Oh,
No.
man.
No. The Dermans at the time did not own a boat when this event occurred, so someone would have to bring a boat in order to drag Shirley out to the deepest part of the lake. That's why they think someone came in by boat. The Dermans lived comfortably, but they were far from the wealthiest people living inside the Reynolds Lake, inside Reynolds Lake Oconee. Sills also believed the Dermans knew at least one of their killers, as there was no signs of struggle. The house was immaculate. All along, he has aggressively pursued anything that's plausible concerning the case, including following up on tips, checking criminal records of persons, poring over data, and traveling to other states to interview someone. And this is where I want you to think about Wilford Brimley. Sills once said, "I would ride my bicycle from here to McIntyre backwards with thumbtacks in my butt if I thought it would solve the case."
Well, I did.
In previous interviews, Sills said he couldn't prove that either of the Dermans were killed in their home in the gated community because there was no physical evidence and there was no blood splatter. That's why they know it was definitely not done in the house, except for the pool, the pool of blood around Russell. There was no blood anywhere in the house.
Okay, so they would have had to take them out and then bring his body back?
Yep.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. They would have had to take him out, shoot him, decapitate him, and then bring the body back.
Yes.
Because Sills even said, if you've ever seen an arterial wound, it spurts blood everywhere, and they didn't have it there. So they were killed elsewhere. In 2020, he said there was evidence found at the scene, but he wouldn't tell what it was. I talked about this earlier. To this day, we don't know what it was. Only one witness has ever come forward in the case. In 2015, someone reported to police that she saw a man on the Dermans' lawn around the time of the murders, and that man became a person of interest because some of his answers to the investigators' questions were inconsistent, but so far nothing has come of it. As far as we're aware, there are no fingerprints, no DNA, no suspects, and no motive. Sills and investigators really don't even have a crime scene because they were killed elsewhere.
Possibly on a boat.
The FBI provided the sheriff's office with a profile of the killer, but it didn't provide Sills with any information he didn't already figure out on his own. So, what are the theories here? The first one, this was a message being sent concerning the person who was in jail for their son's murder. Not likely. First of all, Mark was estranged from his parents. At the point of the murders, that murderer had been in jail for over 14 years. Not likely that they're going to send a message that many years later. And if this was a case of a message being sent, what's the message?
Exactly. I mean, I could understand that supposition if you only killed one of them.
Exactly.
Just speaking logically.
Sure. Next theory, one of the children is responsible. But none of them were in the area. But what if they hired someone? This could be why the murder looked professional, but was it? Russell and Shirley were killed in very different ways, making people believe there were multiple people involved. However, it does appear they were killed elsewhere and then brought back to the house for Russell and then out to the lake for Shirley due to the lack of blood splatter.
Do you need a body for insurance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you necessarily need a body, but the case has to be officially closed. I think is what it is. So I'm not sure on that. But so since you bring that up, why would the children do this? Okay, the children are apparently successful enough on their own. The total split in the will was approximately $1.5 million. So more than half of that was the house. It's split between three people. Mm-hmm. Someone would have been pretty desperate.
Yeah, to kill your own parent.
For $1.5 million. So I don't know.
Or a third of $1.5 million.
Exactly. So there's really been no evidence to corroborate any of that. Was it a neighbor or an acquaintance with a vendetta? There was no signs of struggle. There was no forced entry in the house. Robbery was obviously not the motive. Because there was nothing stolen.
Unless they took something that nobody knew about.
Possible. But, was there an unpaid debt somewhere and someone came to collect? That's a possibility. Thrill kill. A serial killer who had an opportunity. Someone like an Israel Keys. Because this is pretty much just, there's no apparent motive. So could this be another type of serial killer just like that? Extortion, and this is Sheriff Sills' theory. He thinks that it was some sort of extortion, robbery of some sort that the Dermans didn't have or didn't have access to, something that somebody wanted. I still believe that there's more than one perpetrator involved. I still believe that Shirley Derman wasn't murdered here at their house, but most importantly, I believe that somebody knows about this and they need to tell us. A mafia hit or a drug cartel hit. If Russell and Shirley Derman weren't murdered over money or a personal grudge, then why would somebody go to such great lengths to take the couple from the home, kill them elsewhere, dump Shirley's body miles from the home, either take or dump Russell's head somewhere? But in drug and cartel and mafia hits, beheading is sometimes used as proof of death to show that the deed had been done. So there's, those are kind of all the possibilities with that. The thing about it, in any murder, it's important to discover the who, what, why, and where. The problem with this case is we don't know the why or the where in order to get to the who. All we have is the when. Without the why or the where, we're probably never going to get answers in this case, and this may go unsolved forever. The Putnam County Sheriff's Office has asked anyone with information about this case should call their office at 706-485-8559 or leave a tip via the county website at putnamcountysheriff.org. And that's the case of the Lake Oconee Murders. So this one in particular kind of freaked me out. I mean, I live in a gated community with zero crime rate, and to think that something like this could happen. Thank God I don't live backed up against a lake, or I might have really been freaked out on this one.
Well, I can say a couple of things that you mentioned. Growing up on a lake, I know exactly where the deepest part of that lake, well, at least when I was growing up there. So if you're familiar with the area, I guarantee you they know where the deepest part of the lake is.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's someone they knew.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think it is someone that they knew. So anyway, that's my story of the Lake Oconee Murders. I do have my day in history to end on, as we talked about. So the tragedy on this was on May 3rd. So what happened on May 3rd? The first spam email in 1978 on the Arapanet.
Yay!
Yeah. Margaret Mitchell won the Pulitzer Prize for Gone with the Wind in 1937. Another Southern Gothic literature.
Yes.
Christopher Columbus encountered the island of Jamaica in 1494.
Yeah, great for Christopher Columbus, not so much for the Jamaicans.
Not so much for Jamaicans, right. Margaret Thatcher was elected Prime Minister of Britain in 1979.
Maggie.
American singer Bing Crosby was born in 1903.
Yes.
And American singer James Brown was born in 1933.
I love James Brown.
I know you do. That's why I was glad he was on this.
I love James Brown.
So that's my story for today.
Well, thank you, sir.
Absolutely. You betcha. Always happy to tell a story. So with that, that's going to take us to the end of our recording week. As always, you can find us on nerderyandmurdery.com. There you can find the links to our social media as well as our emails. So if you want to get in contact with us.
And pictures.
Pictures.
And links.
Pictures and links. You want to contact us, let us know things you want to hear, things you don't want to hear. Give us any feedback at all. We'll take that. That's also a reminder, please, please, please leave a review and rating on iTunes for our show. It really helps us. It's completely free to you, and it does a great benefit for us.
Please and thank you.
Helps get other people finding our show. So yes, please and thank you. On our site, you can also find our link to our merchandise where you can get your Nerdery or Murdery logo merchandise and show off your fandom. You can also find the link to our patrons. So if you do wish to help donate to our show to help keep us going, you can find the link there. And we do appreciate all of our patrons. Please don't forget that our patrons are going to be getting bonus episodes exclusively that will not be available to the public. So if you are interested in that, please do consider becoming a patron.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. But with that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.
Wah.